Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today is a Patreon request from Sybay. I'm talking about this EP by Alex Smoke called RS1403. Creative title there. Alright then, Alex Smoke, real name Alex Menzies. This is a Scottish minimal techno artist who's been around since the mid-2000s. I'd never heard of this guy before this request came in, but given his back catalog as far as studio albums go is fairly small, on top of the project actually being requested being particularly small as well, I decided to do my due diligence and actually listen to his previous body of work. He has 4 albums under this name as of right now. First there was Incommunicado in 2005, a very solid, if slightly long-winded, atmospheric minimal techno album that had a lot of really good moments on it. I mean, I don't know if the mix he explored was so distinct and out of the box that I could call it properly great, but it could approach that level as a complete whole. I might even hang on to it. I really liked it. And he followed that up with Pareidolia in 2006, which was not as consistent as the debut, but also very solid. Took his sound into some more varied, abstract, and cerebral territory, and had a bunch of his best individual moments. I was not as impressed by his third album in 2010, Lux. There were a few moments of that project that had all these electroacoustic elements and really struck me as nice, but the rest of it delivers a lot of rehashes of the least interesting parts of his first 2 albums and got kind of tedious. Felt like his formula was starting to stagnate a little there. But then his 4th album, Love Over Will, in 2016 was a return to form, had a lot more focus on vocals. And while the singing is not particularly great and he relies a lot on vocal processing, I still generally enjoyed all of it, and it did still stick enough to his usual core style to not be off-putting, despite the album cover. I'm not gonna act like Alex Smoke is one of my new favorite artists or anything, and I didn't bother to check out any of his projects that he's put out under other aliases, or that one that he put out under his real name. But yeah, the stuff I heard is pretty cool. Definitely worth anyone's time if they're a fan of like some good old no-nonsense techno in the same sort of vein as like later period Black Dog. Now, perhaps unfortunately, the project that was requested for me to actually focus on here, RS1403, is a 4-track EP, which I don't think is nearly as much of a point of interest in his catalog. I attempted contacting the requester a few times, trying to see if he would be okay with me changing the focus of this video on either of this guy's first 2 albums, since I felt like those would have made for more interesting video material than this. But I never got a reply, so I just stuck with the original request, and presumably we'll hear back from him after I actually put this video up. I mean, I suppose this EP isn't completely lacking in interesting things to note. This project, as you might guess from the name and cover design, marks Alex Smoke's first full EP for the label R&S Records, a label best known for this kind of straightforward techno material, having hosted Aphex Twin's earliest material, as well as Kenny Shi and Model 500, among many others over many decades. And just giving this thing a cursory listen, it definitely shows him doing his best to fit in with the roster and reputation of this label. Some of the most straightforward techno material under his belt in a catalog which already has no shortage of straightforward techno. If it is notable for anything, it's that this is it's probably the most openly retro-sounding project I've heard from this guy. Despite having come out in 2014, it seems to be trying to sound like something that could have come out in the early 90s. Got a lot of old-school synth textures and drum machines to fit in that sort of mold. I don't think I heard any actual TB303s, but I did hear quite a few synth textures that sort of emulate a similar sound. And it's all perfectly fine for what it is. The grooves he creates certainly have more life and energy put into them than, say, Boudiker's Lego Feet. Though they're not way more texturally interesting than that stuff either. With only 4 tracks here, I really don't have much to break down. I suppose the opener GreenMan is pretty neat, has the most progression with quite a few different synth patterns and a few little processed vocal snippets around the edges. All very nice. The second track, LSD, on the other hand, was probably my least favorite track here, as it felt like the least dimensional of the cuts here. The acid-esque synth loop it runs through is kinda cool and doesn't completely wear out even over nearly 8 minutes, but the track doesn't really have much of anything else to offer outside of that. But on the other hand, the other 2 tracks here could still work decently well for me, despite also falling a bit short, progression-wise. Third track, Tommy Knockers, is probably the track that hits the hardest and has the most driving groove. Those kicks have a lot more weight to them than any of the other tracks, and the way they go up against the squelching synth arpeggios and other various percussion textures is plenty of fun. And the closer, Oni, is the closest a track on here comes to having a hook that I can remember, mainly characterized by these tiny little vocal snippets, I guess. Not that this is the kind of genre in which the primary appeal is to have memorable hooks or be super well textured, but yeah, that is something. And that's pretty much everything I got. I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel for things to note about this project. The requester did mark it as his personal favorite project from this guy, and that's cool and all, but personally, I'm kind of struggling to find all that much noteworthy about it. It's all competently produced. Alex Smoke can get all of these very simple techno and tech house grooves to bang in all the right ways you'd want to. Techno purists will certainly get their fill, but I've heard plenty of other releases in this mold that stick out to me so much more than this, including from Alex Smoke himself, as I already noted. Incommunicado, for instance, had grooves equally as good as the ones on here, if not even better, as well as much better developed atmosphere, a little better texture, and obviously way better fleshed out, being a full hour-long album and all. Wasn't any more complex in its construction than the stuff on here, but I found it a lot more striking and investing. RS1403 pretty much entirely relies on its grooves and absolutely nothing else. And if that's all you need, then good on you. I can definitely see the appeal. And it is short and sweet and to the point, but I couldn't help but find it to be an inessential side offering, and nothing I see myself keeping around beyond this video. Not the worst I've heard from him. I still liked it more than those most tedious parts of Lux, but it's hardly the best I've heard from him either. It's a project that just kind of exists, and I wouldn't have found to be worth making a video on if it hadn't been specifically requested. If all this still sounds like the kind of thing you'd like, give it a shot, but I'm gonna forget this exists in record time. Apologies to the requester for having to finish his run of requests so anticlimactically, but I'm overall feeling like a 6.5 out of 10 on this. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. They're awesome people. You want to add yourself to that list or make me review something, link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.